So another day and another USC commit in the 2026 class. This is becoming a borderline daily occurrence. Do you realize how outside the norm USC is right now? They have 20 players committed for 2026. 20. 2-0. The next highest of the classes that are inside the top 10 is 14. Now that's Kansas. And maybe you hear that and say, wait, Kansas has a top 10 class? None of this means anything. I mean, this could all change a bit. Yeah, this could change a bunch. Here's the difference. The recruiting potential of USC dwarfs the recruiting potential of Kansas, not just because of what's in the backyard. USC's in the Big 10, Kansas in the Big 12. The dollars are a little bit more substantial over there in Los Angeles, though. I love seeing Lance Leipold maybe push for a top 10 class. Certainly a top 20 class would be a welcome sight for the Jayhawks. But keeping this on USC, they have the number one class in the country according to 24/7 Sports. And yes, some of that is due to the fact that they just have way more players than everybody else. The number two class in the country is Clemson, who's at 13 commits. And USC is at 20, which is an insane number. Last year, Oregon pulled in a top 5, top 10 recruiting class. They had 19 players in the 2025 cycle. 19. USC's sitting at 20 now. By the way, they're not done. Their latest commitment is Kohen Brown, a 3-star wide receiver who was looking at Baylor and Arkansas most heavily. USC wins out in that battle. And look, is that a world-beating recruit who changes the landscape? But you never know which guys that don't have a bunch of stars next to their name are going to turn out to be really good or solid players. But you sure do give yourself a much better chance of finding those guys when you just keep finding them. You just keep getting them to commit to your school. The last two guys I've talked about on the show are actually among the lowest rated recruits in the class of 2026. They also they didn't slip into flipping Tomohini Topui, a defensive lineman from Oregon. It looks like they'll have to work to keep him committed, but guess what? They got him to flip. A defensive lineman flipped away from former defensive coordinator Dan Lanning over at Oregon. In the last couple of years, Oregon USC recruiting battles have been incredibly commonplace. They are only going to become more frequent, it seems, in the coming years. Now, in past seasons, Oregon's tended to have the advantage with defensive players, but this is a guy who I've mentioned before and will mention here again. When they got Jakeem Stewart to go to USC, 5-star defensive lineman who does not look like a freshman whatsoever, and I imagine plays in some capacity for the Trojans this year. When that happened, that made me turn my head and go, it's one thing when Lincoln Riley gets a quarterback. They flipped Jonas Williams from Oregon. The Ducks are going after Ryder Lyons and Jared Curtis, of course, but still, Williams a really talented quarterback. And they flipped Jakeem Stewart, and you go, well, wait a minute, that's the side of the ball that Lanning specialized in. He's got Tosh Lupoy on his staff, who is a world-renowned recruiter, especially when it comes to defensive linemen. Typically, you'd think, in theory, Oregon wants to go get a defensive lineman. They go out and get him. So when he flipped to USC, I turned my head and thought, let's keep an eye on that. Then they go out and get Chad Bowden from Notre Dame to come be their general manager. That is proving to be an inflection point in USC recruiting, because this is indeed a similar position to what they were in a year ago. But is it exactly the same? No, I don't think they had 20 players committed a season ago. And yeah, Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry ended up flipping away. Big 5-star defensive lineman. Gibson went to Georgia. Terry is now over at Texas. But the GM factor can't be overlooked. The NIL commitments cannot be overlooked because the results are here. They just continue to roll in time and time and time again. And by the way, here's the interesting thing. Two notes on this USC recruiting surge. They might not have their highest rated player in the country yet, or in their class rather, because there are guys out there across the country who are still considering USC. I'm talking about Ryder Lyons, 5-star quarterback who's looking at BYU, Oregon, Michigan, and USC. And I'm thinking about Brandon Arrington, a 5-star athlete who's probably a defensive back. Maybe he's a receiver. Maybe he's a two-way sort of guy, Travis Hunter type. Like maybe he's Travis Hunter light is kind of the scouting report on him. Those are two guys that are heavily considering USC. So That's the first thing I look at is, hey, they might not have their most prized recruit yet, and they are beating everybody right now. Recruiting's a long season. You got to keep it up through April and May and June and July. But by August, your class is mostly set. So I know that people that are anti-USC want to throw out, well, it's early, they did this last year, all this sort of stuff. Okay, yes, it's still early. Plenty of things can change. As I've said before, USC looks to have given themselves a floor of a top 10 class. That's the way it seems to me. I would be shocked if USC's recruiting class for the 2026 cycle falls outside of the top 10 at any point in time. I would be really, really surprised. So at some point, it does reach, hey, this is just what the class is. You know, if you say that in February, all right, it's February, long way to go. We are encroaching 1 week gone, or 1 week is basically gone in the month of April. Well, that's closer than we were in February. And you just keep inching along, and you flipped a couple guys from Oregon, and you're looking at these big recruits over here. So that's the first thing I think about. Here's the second thing, though. How big does this class get? Are they just going to go? Do they feel really good about the players they have and the ability to keep them committed to USC? Are they going to be able to just say, hey, we have these guys, and we might lose 2, maybe 3, but nothing more than that. So we can just go big game hunting now. We can put all of our time, energy, and dollars into Ryder Lyons and Brandon Arrington or whatever other high profile recruit they're going after. And right now, just remember this particular take of mine. Xavier Griffin is their highest rated commit. He is a 5-star linebacker who was crystal balled to Georgia. He committed to USC instead. He's been committed for several months now. I won't be surprised if he is not the highest rated guy or the biggest name that USC gets in this 2026 class. They are trying to generate the buzz, ratchet up the heat, and it's working. It's working. How could you not feel good about this if you're a USC fan? But if you're looking at how big this class could get, USC is sitting at 20 players right now. Yeah, guys could decommit, but who's to say USC doesn't have 7 to 10 more players in their back pocket or the ability to go out and get those guys? Because remember, they had a bunch of transfer departures this past year. They weren't upset about all of them. I'm sure there are a couple they would have liked to have kept around, but overall, they're trying to do a little bit of a miniature reset, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. That's why I'm watching a guy like Brandon Arrington, who might be a stud corner or a receiver, you never know, or both. Or the fact that they have Xavier Griffin at linebacker, or the fact that they got Jakeem Stewart last cycle, or the fact that they have a pretty heavily loaded defensive line haul. They are sitting currently at 4 defensive linemen already in this 2026 class. So I'm fascinated to see how this all plays out, because USC has not been recruiting the way they're fully capable of. Now it looks like they are. They have to finish the deal, but this is how you'd want to start. There is no team that is recruiting better in college football right now than the USC Trojans, whether you like that or not. Will it continue? We'll continue to monitor, because it's recruiting season and portal season is about to roll around. And I got so excited. I'm so fired up about this. I just whacked my hand on the desk and shook the camera here on YouTube. That is what's going on and why this keeps coming up on the show, because USC recruiting to its full potential is something everyone has to be aware of.